Welcome back to Boring Gear Reviews. This week we've got the Apocalypse Fuzz from Death by Audio. Death by Audio was started in 2022 by Oliver Ackerman, and they're based out of Queens, New York. They're certainly one of my favorite pedal companies. Their approach, both aesthetically and in the pedals that they make, is really cool. They seem beholden to no sort of trend or fad, and because of that, it allows them to make very unique and fresh pedals. Their stuff tends to feel very experimental and raw, which for me is super conducive to feeling inspired and creative. So with the Apocalypse Fuzz, the first thing you notice is obviously like just how gorgeous it is. Their graphic design and layouts and knob choices really make you feel like you want to turn knobs and experiment with sound. So if you look at just aesthetically, it's gorgeous. You know, just very simple white and black layout over this, I don't know, what is this? Robin's egg? I don't know if that's true. I'm going to say it's Robin's egg blue. Let's go with that. Super pretty to look at, which is fun because this pedal is gnarly as hell. And you wouldn't, I think the obvious choice would be like, well, because this pedal is so, or can be so intense and aggressive, let's design it in a way that looks intense and aggressive. But they went the opposite way, and they made a very pretty, very simple, easy to understand and see layout. Awesome. Even their knob choices, these big chunky knobs, kind of really draw you in and make you want to turn knobs and tweak stuff, which, you know, if you're into pedals, that's part of the allure. I think about like when I was a kid and I would go to events or museums where there was old electronic and sound equipment, or you know, submarine equipment and or airplane stuff, and everything inside of me was telling me to just turn knobs, flip switches and toggles and push buttons. And that's kind of the feeling I get with Death by Audio stuff. You know, just by looking at it, it just is very pleasing to look at. You feel like you want to touch these things and see what they do. There's an element of fun and exploration with their stuff, which I really appreciate. Even with my son, who's 7 now, but even when he was a baby, he would come and turn all the knobs on my pedal board and just constantly turn and flick and push stuff. And I would play so he could see what happens when he does these things and see the different sounds that he was creating. And I feel that when you have this type of layout with big knobs and lines and markers everywhere, it gives me that same feeling. Even as a 40-year-old guy, I feel like a kid turning knobs. So the controls for this are pretty simple. We have a volume, which controls the overall output of the pedal when it's on. You have a drive control, which is going to control the amount and volume of the internal preamp. And then you have this sweepable EQ, which is really cool and unique in that, you know, a lot of tone controls will either cut or boost low and high end. With this, at the bottom of it, you have a boost in low end. And then as you turn it up, it evolves into like a mid scoop and then a mid boost. And then there's a few different stages of high end boost. So it's really cool and functional. Depending on which setting you're at, you'll find that you'll really use the kind of the width of this EQ knob. So what makes this pedal really unique is that it actually has 5 fuzz circuits in it. The first one is their twin T scoop, and this is very mid scooped because it boosts the bass and treble. This sounds more kind of tight and metallic. And with this setting, the volume drops quite a bit, so you'll want to really boost the volume to make up for that. Our next setting is the War Fuzz, which is based off of their Fuzz War fuzz pedal. Really thick, organic, warm, kind of a wide EQ band fuzz. Really awesome. And the next one is the dual J-FET. So very similar to the War Fuzz, but it's going to get its sound from dual J-FET transistors. In the 4th position, we have an octave up fuzz, and this one gets really gnarly. Super aggressive and interesting sounds you can make with this. This is something I really love to experiment with. And my favorite setting is the last setting. The 5th position on here is gain times 1,000. So it's just really increased gain structure, and it causes, because it's being pushed so hard, it causes a lot of artifacts like spitting and spluttering. I think like a gated fuzz is my favorite kind of fuzz, and this isn't exactly gated, but because it's so extreme, you'll get a lot of that quality of a gated fuzz, where it's every time you hit a note, it's pushing so aggressively that, like I said, it's spitty and spluttery, and it's breaking up all over the place. Really, really fun. And this one, you'll get a massive use out of the drive knob. It really changes it. Normally when I use it, I'll keep it on this setting and just roll off the drive and then increase it as I want more extreme sounds. For this demo, I'm using my 2021 Dunable Yeti. This has custom wound Dunable Grizzly pickups in it, so they are unpotted and low output. And as always, I will be going into my Universal Audio Apollo X6 and using the Softube JMP 2203 amp plugin, which is a JCM 800. So for this first clip, I'm going to be using the 5th setting, the gain times 1000, and I'm going to have the EQ about midway between mid and treble, so a lot of nice crisp high end and mid range. And for the volume, it's going to be around 2 o'clock and the drive around 11. So enjoy all the spluttery goodness. All right, next up, we're going to use the War Fuzz setting. Here, I'm going to keep the EQ a little past mid, so there's going to be a mid boost, and the drive around, 1 or 2 o'clock. This is one of the ways you can use the pedal a little more traditionally for just a really good sounding thick fuzz. And today we're going to pair that with the Death by Audio Echo Dream 2. This is their PT 2399 delay. Super awesome delay. What's really cool about this, aside from how it looks and all these amazing knobs and switches you can play with, is on the time knob, the further up you crank it, the more degraded the delay signal gets. So you'll hear like a kind of a lo-fi hiss and crackles and pops because I'm going to keep it maxed the whole time. And in the beginning of this, I'm going to start with my volume rolled back, and then I'll increase it so you can hear how the Apocalypse fuzz cleans up a little bit. So next we're going to use the octave setting. Here I'm going to dime the volume knob, so it's going to push a little harder that way, and I'm going to keep the drive somewhere around noon. I'm also going to roll back the EQ, not quite all the way down, but maybe, I don't know, quarter of the way up or something like that. To me, this setting feels a little more reminiscent of like a 60s fuzz, where super low end heavy with a lot of kind of octave artifacts and things like that. I really enjoy this sound. So now we're going to go into the dual J-FET mode. Volume's going to be set around 3 and the drive around 1 o'clock. I'm also going to crank the EQ, so a lot more high end, and that's because I'm pairing this with the Meris Enzo. So commonly with a pedal like this, using it for like super aggressive sounds isn't what you would normally go to, but aside from just beautiful synth sounds and sequence and arpeggiating sounds that this can do, it can handle really amazingly as a octave down and up pedal in either direction. So I'm actually going to have this 2 octaves down, and it's going to be slightly resonant with a little bit of the filter and modulation going. So you get this kind of I don't know how to describe it. You get that, well, one, you're going to hear a very big low end alongside my guitar signal, but there's also a kind of a quality where the filter is kind of opening and closing very quickly. So you'll hear that as well. Really fun and huge sounding. lastly, we're going to use the twin T scooped setting here, the first setting. So like I mentioned before, I'm going to crank the volume all the way up. The drive will be around 11 o'clock, and I'm going to roll back the EQ about a little less than midway. So around, what is that? I don't know, 10 o'clock or something like that. I'm going to pair this with a couple things. The first thing is the Earthquaker Devices Talons. This is a discontinued distortion pedal, but it's fantastic. If you can find one, you should get it. It's really, really good. And I'm not going to use this too aggressively. I'm going to use this before the Apocalypse, essentially as like a boost. So there's very low gain here, but you know, the sound of a boost before fuzz is really cool. It adds, you know, this fuzz can get very bright, so it's not an issue, but there's something about adding an overdrive in front of it that when you add overdrive in front of fuzz, it adds a kind of sparkle to the top end. It's not just treble, so there's something else going on. I don't know the words. It sounds awesome, really, really good. And I'm also going to, at the end of it, the chain, I'm going to be using the Death by Audio Rooms. This is their digital reverb. I think it's their first digital pedal. Super, super good pedal. I've featured this before. And I'm going to be using the peak setting, which is like a resonant reverb, a resonant EQ reverb. So it's going to be more focused on the low end with like a medium decay. And for me, and no dry signal. So it's just going to be the wet signal coming through. And for me, you know, this sound is super nostalgic and one that I use all the time. I don't care if it's from the 80s. That's when I'm from, and I like it. So yeah, enjoy. And there you have it. That was the Apocalypse from Death by Audio. This is a great fuzz. One of my favorites. Like I said, you know, their graphic design choices, their color choices, layout, knob selection, everything about their pedals is really inviting and pushes you to experiment. These aren't the pedals that I feel that you would kind of find a setting you like and then never touch it again. It wants you, and they want you to really get in there and turn knobs and flip switches and see what you can do, see what else is in there. So I'm a huge fan of that. If you're looking for a fuzz and you're kind of not sure where to start or where to go, this is a great place to start because you have so many options that you would get from a lot of other single fuzz pedals. So here you get 5 in 1. It's kind of a no-brainer. And, you know, aside from big fuzz sounds, it will do relatively low gain kind of distortion and overdrive sounds as well. So you don't have to use it super aggressively, but it's there if you want it. Thank you all so much for watching and for all your comments and everybody who's been subscribing and things like that. It means so much, and I'm really excited that everybody's into this. I'm into it too. So thank you all, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you get updated every time I put out a new video. I'll be back next week with another demo, and until then, thanks for watching and peace.